Well, happy December, everyone. My name is Ashley. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'm personally really excited about this webinar because I think it's one thing to see a great newsletter and a great email, it's another to know how to make it. And so I'm joined by our very own Michelle Mallard and OG Josh Willie. If you guys have never met Michelle before, Michelle actually works at CourtReserve and she works part time at Old Coast Pickleball. She does all of our amazing social and marketing. If you want to see some amazing content, you need to go to Instagram and Facebook and follow Old Coast Pickleball because that is all Michelle, all the videos, all the social, all the everything. So when I was looking at Michelle's newsletter from Old Coast Pickleball a couple months ago, I'm like, we have got to teach people how to do this because she's doing all of it out of CourtReserve. And so we're super excited. It's her first webinar and welcome you too. So let's make some
Thank you,
announcements.
Ashley.
Yeah. All right. Well, our first announcement, if you are a pickleball club, the last club pickleball mastermind of the year is coming up this next week. And I talked to Devin this morning and he still has a couple of seats. So if there's nothing better than to go to Utah in December, go to Club Mastermind next week. It's a great event for pickleball, all things pickleball. We're sending 3 people there. You'll love it. You'll learn so much. And then if you want to know where else CourtReserve is going to be in the next couple of months, we actually have a brand new marketing site. If you go out to courtreserve.com and go to events, these are some of the things that we're going to be doing in the next couple of weeks. We're going up to Seattle to participate in the IAPPF Regional Conference, Pickleball and Paddle. We're going to be at the Racket X City Series stop in Orlando. I get to moderate a panel on data and technology. I'm super excited. And then we're going to be a part of the USTA Southern Annual Meeting in Atlanta as well. If there's one thing today that you guys need to know about, it's the next slide. It is Catalyst. So in 2026, CourtReserve is going to be 10 years old. And so we have slashed the price of Catalyst for 2026. And it's 2 day, so it's a day and a half, literally. The first half day is going to be roundtables, networking. We're going to be pickleball this and tennis this and paddle this. We're going to have hands-on learning labs, one-to-one demos. It's going to be incredible. And we're going to have it here in St. Augustine, Florida. So, especially for my cold weather friends, come on down to Florida, sign up. You can go out to CourtReserve and go to Catalyst Conference and get your tickets today. We're going to feed you. We're going to play pickleball that evening. It's going to be so much fun. And Josh and Michelle will be there. So you can grab them and have a one-on-one. I think I have said enough, folks. Let's get into the meat. You guys ready?
Oh, yes, I'm ready.
All right.
Yeah, just a couple of things to point out before we start diving into CourtReserve. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, please use the Q&A section because we will be able to see those questions after the webinar. And if we don't get to your question, then we will be able to send out an email, answer any questions that you have. We aren't able to keep the chat after the webinar. So if you do send a question in there, we aren't able to keep track of it if we don't get to it. So just want to point that out before we get started. So now we can jump into CourtReserve, and I want to thank Michelle for letting me crash her webinar. Before we
I'm glad you
dive,
did.
before we dive into actually creating email content, I did want to take some time to go over some improvements that we have been making to our bulk email builder. So everything I'm going to show you today in the webinar is not released publicly yet. It is available in beta. So if you are interested in anything that you see today, after the webinar, feel free to reach out to our customer success team by clicking the green icon right here and let them know that you are interested in being a beta customer for those bulk email improvements. We've already released it for our first beta group and we've already gotten some great feedback. So once all of that feedback is addressed, we're going to be releasing it to our next beta group. So from a high level, what have we improved on in the bulk email editor? We've listened to a lot of feedback that we got in the idea board and also some things that we have been seeing in support. And I just want to list a few things that we have improved on before we actually dive into it. So one, we are giving you the ability to create and manage multiple draft emails. Two, we're giving you the ability to create and manage email templates. Three, we have improved the create email flow. And 4, we are giving you the ability to schedule your emails out for a later date and time. So let's dive right into it. I'll kind of show you how it all works. With all of these improvements, we did also want to create a new dashboard for the bulk email builder so that you're not directly going straight into that create email flow. So once this is released into your organization, once you go to members on the sidebar and you click on bulk email, you're now going to see this new dashboard with a few different tabs and buttons on it. So let me kind of go over each of these tabs and buttons. First, we're going to have the drafts tab. So this is going to be any email that we have started on, but not yet sent or scheduled out to our players. For any of our draft emails, we can click the view button so we can pick up wherever we left off with that email. And if we click on the more actions button, we can delete it if we ever need to discard any draft email that we have started, but we can also duplicate that draft email. Now, something that I do want to point out here is we have also improved the duplicate feature. Right now in CourtReserve, whenever you are duplicating a sent email, it's really just going to take the content from that previous email and put it into a new email that you are creating. But with these improvements, when you click on duplicate now, you are going to be able to pick and choose the information and content that's actually going to be relevant for you when you are duplicating that email. So if it's just the email content, if it's just the list of recipients, we can go in and we can pick and choose what information we actually do want to duplicate. So that goes over the draft tab. The next tab that we have here is our sent emails tab. This is really going to show us all of that same information that we can already see in the view email history button in CourtReserve right now. This is going to be where we're going to be able to see any emails that we have already sent out to our players. And just to point out a release that we had earlier this year, you can now track the email metrics for any sent email. So on the dashboard, you will be able to easily see your open rate and your click rate. And then when you click on the sent email details page, you're going to have this new email information section where we can easily see the open rate, the click rate, and the bounce rate for this email. Something that I do want to point out here is if you look at this grid right here, you're going to see that we're able to click on the open rate, click rate, and bounce rate. This is an easy way for us to see the players that actually fall into those categories. So let's say we have a list of players that have their email bounced or dropped for any reason. We can easily get a list of all of those players here. And for example, we can text them to let them know that there's something wrong with the email that they have on their account and they need to update it so that we can properly send an email out to them. So that's just sort of a use case on how you can sort of utilize these this new grid that we've added here. So if we go back to the sent emails tab here, I do kind of want to touch on some of the options that we have under the more actions menu. So we do have the ability to also duplicate the sent email, just like we currently have in CourtReserve right now. But we do also have the ability to save this sent email as a template. I'm going to go over templates in a little bit more detail after we actually kind of go through creating an email. So I will touch on that a little bit later. And then we also have the scheduled emails tab. I'm also going to touch on that after we go through creating an email as well. So the next step we can do here is kind of just go through creating an email. This will sort of segue us eventually over into that content step. And that's going to be where I pass it over to Michelle. So with these improvements, we now have this create email button. And when we click on this button here, the first step we're going to have is adding the email name. This is actually a new field that we have added in the system. This is going to be an internal name that we can use to track this email that never gets shown to our recipients. So it is different than the subject. This is just an easy way for me to say, I'm starting my December newsletter and I just want an easy name and an easy way to track this email that's, going to stay as a draft until I'm ready to send it out. After you have added that email name and you click save, then you get brought to the create email page. So there's a lot that looks different here. I'll kind of go from the top down and kind of go over each of the differences that we see. On the top of this page, we have the email name. And we do have this pencil icon here. So if you ever do need to edit the email name, you will always be able to do so. We do have a save as draft button. So that's an easy way for you to just sort of save your progress, keep it in a draft state. If you click this back button, it is still going to save the information that you have worked on. But we did add this button here just so that there is a clear button that says save on it, just so you know that that content is actually going to be saved. Below this top bar here, you're going to notice that we now have 4 steps for creating an email. And in this stepper, I will be able to sort of click through each step that I have in the email. And you'll also see that there's different statuses I can see for each step. So if there is a required field that needs to be filled out from my end, I'll see this icon right here with the exclamation point, letting me know that it's not completed. But if I have filled out all of the required fields for a step, you will see a check mark in that step there. So let's get started on the 2-step. I know visually this looks very different, so I do kind of just want to walk through it. Visually, the main difference here that I'll start off with is we are now no longer showing the filters for the recipient list at all times. So that way, if you do need to just send an email out to all recipients and we don't really care about filtering, we can just easily toggle the send to all recipients toggle here. We can still go in and manually select individuals if we need to do that as well. But if you do need to filter, we now do have a filter button that is going to open this filter menu here. Just to clarify, we haven't removed or added any new filters to the recipient list. This is just visually a new way for us to display these filters. So I can go in here, I can make any changes that I need to my filters. If I need to clear out all the filters, we do have a clear all button. But once I click apply filters here, that's going to update my recipient list for me. Below the recipient list, we still do have the option to manually add additional recipients here, and we do still have the ability to CC any following system users. So really, this is just a new way for us to display the current information that we already have inside of CourtReserve and just kind of make it a little bit more modern. So the next step here is going to be the from step. This one's a little bit more straightforward. From here, we're going to be selecting the from name and the reply to for this email. By default, the from name will be your organization name, and the reply to will be the system user that started this email. But we do have the ability to change that reply to or that from name if we ever need to at any point. The next step here is going to be the subject line. Another step that's pretty straightforward. Here, we're just going to be adding the subject to the email we're creating. And once we have the minimum amount of characters needed for that subject, you can see up there that the status for this step is now checked off, meaning that I will now be able to send this email. But before I send it out, the last step here is going to be the content. Before I pass it over to Michelle, just one more bell and whistle that I want to point out. Once you have some content that's actually added to the email builder, we have also added a way for you to send a test email. So now you will be able to choose from any of your system users to send this test email out. And you do also have the ability to manually choose an additional recipient if you want to, for example, add your personal email as one of the recipients for this test email. Awesome. So that kind of goes over my first segment. I'm now going to pass it over to Michelle so she can go over actually building out this content for these emails. Let me stop sharing my screen here and I will pass it over to you, Michelle.
All right, sounds good. I am going to be sharing my screen here in just a second. There we go. Hope you all can see it. So I'm super honored to be on this webinar to share the process that I do with Old Coast Pickleball newsletters and announcements through CourtReserve email builder. It is amazing. And you guys, last year when they made some updates to it, I was so excited. I was messaging Josh all the time. Josh and the product team have done an incredible job. And once again, the new options for you guys it's going to be amazing. So thankful for the product team and our development team headed up by Nick. They're doing a fantastic job. I'm going to go through the process and the steps that I do for Old Coast Pickleball, and it's just my process. I'm just sharing it with you for ideas. I'm hoping that it helps you think of new ways to use the system and to be able to create amazing newsletters for your members. And so you can take what I give you, and I hope that you improve it and use your creativity. So the first step that I do, and even though one of the new options are to save drafts, which is incredible, I love that option. I still am probably going to start with this step, is that I create all of the content that I need for each section of the newsletter prior, and I put it in a Google Doc just so I have all of that information and I can get ready for my next step. So here are all the sections that I have for this example newsletter. So I have it in my Google Doc, and I have it with the subject line, the body content, and usually what I'll also add is if I have alt text for the image, and then any URLs. And so that way, when I go to build my newsletter, I have it all in one spot and it's super easy to grab. So I have that, and I just wanted to show you that first step that I do. Next, I go over to Canva, and then in Canva has some free options. If you haven't used Canva, I highly suggest signing up for at least a free version. You can do so much with it. You can do YouTube tutorials on the best way to use Canva. It is an awesome tool to use, and I am using the pro version of this, but the free version has so much that you can use, and so many free stock images and things like that. However, with the free version, you do still get templates. And I would highly encourage you, when you build your Canva images for your organization, that you use your own images. Use images of your facility, use images of your members. And those are things that you don't need to use a paid version for. You can do that with your free version, adding your own images with the upload option. And your players love to see themselves on it. So utilize that. I have a story from Old Coast Pickleball that I had a member come in and tell me that her husband was in the most recent newsletter, and he was so excited. He shared it with all of his family. So that was having the email forwarded on to other people just because his picture was in there. So I highly encourage using your own images, but I'm going to click on this document that I did for the example today. So I like to have this preset up. I have it sized. If we look at the file here, I have it sized 1920 pixels by 1080 pixels, and that's a size that I use. If you would want more of like a panoramic view, say like cut this part out and you want your images to be more panoramic, you can size it accordingly. But what I do in Canva is I have this document already set up. I have it titled for my newsletter images, so I know that all of my images are going to be the same. So in here, I build each of the images that I'm going to be using for the newsletter based off of the content that I've already had put together of what we're going to be sharing in the newsletter. And so here, using images from OCP, using our members, using our staff. And so also incorporating your sponsors is a big thing in your newsletters you can do. So once I've built all this out and have this ready to go, then I go to share and I download them. I download them as JPEGs is what I use for the newsletter. Make sure it's the fullest quality. And then when you download it as a JPEG, it will download each of these slides into a folder separately. So you'll have each individual image that you can use. And so that's my next step. So building the content, then building your images, having that ready to go. One thing I did want to show really quickly, if you do want to do your custom size for your newsletter images, right here on the top of the home screen of Canva, you can do custom size. So here you can put the width and the height, and you can choose pixels or inches or whatever you want here. So you can start from scratch and the size that works best for you and how you want your newsletter to look. So we're going to move over to CourtReserve Email Builder, and we already have the example that we're using in this webinar setup, but I'm going to start from scratch. So I'm going to go up to the top here on the right-hand side and start from scratch. So we're going to create an email. We are going to put the title in, the email name in, what Josh mentioned. This is just for your view. It won't be the subject of your email, and then hit save. Here we have those steps that Josh mentioned, the different steps that you can go through, and we're going to be working on the content. That's the last one here. And we're going to go to design an email. Once we choose this option, we'll have two things that we can select. We can just select from scratch, which I'm going to show you now, or select a template. Templates are huge and they are great time savers, and Josh is going to be covering that more in detail at the end. So for this one, we're going to start from scratch. So once we're in the email builder, we're starting from scratch. There is nothing there. It is completely blank, but we have all of these options over on the right-hand side. So content, rows, and settings. So I'm going to talk about the settings first. So if we set up the settings, we can go through and we can choose how we want this email to look. And we can choose to have our text centered. We can choose the background color for this. We can choose different options, link colors. So the default is this pink. I like to change the link color to more branded color of the club. So I'm going to change this color. Just simply click on there. And you can drag and drop and choose it with the slider. Or if you have your hex code, you can go ahead and put that hex code in there. Other things that you can do through here, you can do your email details, subject, and different things. And this will uniform the entire email as you're building it, as far as like your text and the content areas. So we're going to go back over to content, and how I typically start my newsletters is I typically start it with an image, because I want to draw their attention to this email. So all you do is you just grab the image, drag it in here, and now we have this empty box. So we're going to hit browse, and I've already uploaded those images that were created in Canva. And then to upload an image, you would just simply do there, click the upload, and then choose your image from the upload option. But here is my top header image. So we're going to insert that. We have it in there. It is beautiful. It looks great. Attention grabber for the start of our email. So now let's look at the content. Now we have different options to work with this image. So great thing is, if we need to, we selected the wrong image, we want to change an image, we can use this and change the image, and it will take us back to the file manager. Another great thing is sorry, I had to select it. All right, so great thing that they have is you can do your alt text, which is super important when creating for your members. So you're going to put your alt text in there, and then you can also do a link to your images, which is great. Towards the end, I'm going to tell you another reason why I love this feature of adding a link to your images. But for any of the linked URLs in this example, I'm going to use the CourtReserve email. So what I typically do for the header would be Old Coast Pickleball email, and then I'll tell you as we move forward what I usually use for links. But for this example, I will be using the CourtReserve email. So that's about all that I want to cover on the image content. If we click back on content on the top tab, we get the different options again. So next, what I typically do is I typically will add a title. So this would be the subject of the first section. And then from here, we are going to, I'm so sorry. I had to grab something really quick. From here, we're going to set this up. And so later on, when Josh talks about templates, it's going to be a huge time saver in your workflow. But for the sake of going through scratch, starting from scratch right now, we are going to build this out one piece at a time. And so I am going to go ahead and grab a couple URL, I'm sorry, some of my hex codes that we're going to change. So one thing that I want to do is you can choose different titles here, font families, and so on. I'm going to use the default for right now for this. Text color, I do want to change. I do want it to be more cohesive with my brand. Here's that link color that we started with the settings option. It's no longer pink. We're going to keep it center aligned. And then one thing that I also love about this is changing the padding. So if you notice here, this is very tight, kind of has some visual tension in there with the default set to 0. So I typically will add 10 to the padding. The awesome thing about this is you could do it for all sides, or you can choose more options so you can fine tune it and change it. So say I wanted a little bit more on the top and just the bottom, and I wanted to keep the sides the same. You can also change that. All right, we're going to go back to the content row, and now, it would help if I put the information in there. So I'm going to copy from that document I shared with you in the very beginning, and I'm going to highlight what is in here and put in the information. Now we'll go back to the content row and we're going to add a paragraph. So with the paragraph, same thing. We're going to go in here. I'm going to click on it. It's going to give me the options. I'm going to grab my hex code, and then I'm going to change the color of this text. My link color is already the same, and then I am going to grab my body for this section, and I'm going to click and paste. So I'm just clicking and pasting from the document I've already created. Once again, there are quite a few options in here. I encourage you to play around with it, use your creativity, and have fun with all of these options that you can customize it. I am going to add, even though the default for the body is padding is 10, I typically do make it 15. Once again, you have the more options here to change that padding. One other thing that I typically add at the end of a section is a divider. So if we go back up to content, we can add a divider. Your email will look great without the divider. You don't need a divider. I personally, it's just a personal preference. I like it because I know that my viewers will see that they're going into the next section. The default is gray, which looks great, but I do want to point out that you can also change the color there. So you can change it if you want it to your branded color. So say we wanted to put that same dark blue in there. All right, so there we changed our divider color, and we're going to go to the next section. So what we're going to do here is we're going to add another image. And from here, the next section I have in here is to talk about Get Our App. So the beautiful branded mobile app. So we're going to choose that image and we're going to insert it. And so now we have the image that was already created in Canva. And we have these options over here. We can change it. We can add the alt text. I'm not going to do this on every single one, but just I want to point it out. For this, you can also use a URL and you can choose any options there. So moving forward on the rest of my sections, what I want to do is I took some time to change some of the settings on these two, the subject title and the body. So instead of going through and changing that every single time, since we're building from scratch, I'm going to copy and paste. However, once again, templates and drafts, after you've created an email, making it into a template is going to be huge. So simply just choose the duplicate, this little move arrows, pretty simple. You're just going to move that down there. Then we're going to grab our content we already created, and we're going to go ahead and put that in there. So we've got that. Now we're going to go click on here. We're going to duplicate our body and we're going to move it down. And from here, we are going to now change that context. So one thing about this section is I did add something in here. So there's another thing that we can use from our, hold on, sorry. Technical difficulties. Hold on. There we go. So from our content row, we are now going to use icons. Icons is an awesome feature because we do also have the socials already pre-built in that I'll show you later on. But icons are basically like the same thing. You can add an icon on here that will have a link that if they click on the icon, it will bring you directly to where you want to go. So I'm going to add a new icon here. I'm going to change this image and I'm going to change it to the Google Store. From here, there are more options. So we can look at the more options and we can do a link URL. So from this, we can link them directly to the app in the URL in Google, and then we can go from there. So another thing is we can add another one. So here we're going to change the image and we're going to do the Apple Store and insert that. Go to more options. Once again, we can link a URL to bring them directly to there to get your branded mobile app. So along these lines, if you're adding any text, different things, you can change this. One thing I did like is that you can also change the size of the icons. So you can make them bigger if you like. And so play around with this. Awesome. You can add some more spacing with the padding between those icons. So that's about that, all for that section. Now I do want to add the divider after this section. So we've already changed the color of divider. Instead of going to content, using another divider and getting the default, I am going to just simply click on this one, duplicate it, and drag it down underneath. So we're going on to our next one, and we are going to add another image. The next section we have is level up leaks. So we're going to click on our images and upload. We already have the level up leaks. We're going to insert that image. From here, don't forget, you can change the alt text. You can add a linked URL. Great options there. Now we're going to go ahead and duplicate our title once again. And then, oops, I duplicated it twice. Don't want to do that. And I'm going to drag that down. From here, grab my text that I've already done, already have prepared, and we're going to go ahead and fill that in. And then we're going to duplicate the paragraph. Once again, this is a lot of duplicating, moving, because we're working from scratch. I've already made some changes, and so you will have the ability to have a template already made and use that. So one thing I like to do when I'm advertising in the newsletters for any of our events at the club, you have a URL with those events. You can also create widgets. If you have a tournament with events all day long, you can do a widget that will bring them directly to all of those options that they can sign up for. So what I like to do for any of our events is have a call to action button. So we're going to go to our content. We're going to grab a button. And we're going to put a button in here. Default is this really pretty blue. I love it. However, I do want to keep on brand. So I'm going to bring in the blue that goes along with this example organization. And we are going to change that background color here to the color we want. There are a lot of other things that we can do. So we can add our link URL. So let me grab my CourtReserve URL. We're going to put that in there. And so one other thing that you can do, go through all of these options, but we can have content padding. So we can add to the top of that button and make it wider, top and bottom. I kind of like the width that it already was, but I did like it a little wider. So I added a little more padding to each side of the button. So to change what this button says, we're going to simply say register. So they can click on there to register for that. One thing before moving forward on this, I did want to point out that if you go in the URL, instead of clicking and adding, pasting a URL to the event, to the widget, you can also just simply type mail to, and then this action will come. So if you want them to be able to send an email to you, you can put who it's going to. So you can put your email in there, whoever's email it needs to be, the subject, and you could put a body in here that is already pre-typed out if it's something that you want them to reply and be able to easily send an email. So that is a really cool feature. You can also leave the body blank and they can fill that out themselves as well. But just wanted to point that out with our buttons. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and duplicate our divider because we're going to go to the next section. Moving forward. And now we're going to go back to content. I really love, and this is just a personal preference again, I really love putting an image in there to draw their attention at the top of each of my sections. It's my preference. I think it draws attention to that section, and it just brings them next to the title and the hierarchy following that. So our next one, we're going to congratulate the winners of the last week's level up. So let's go ahead and grab this. We're going to insert it. Once again, use images of your players. Take a picture of them before they leave that week. They're the winners. And throw that in there. They'll be super excited to see it. We're going to do something a little bit different in this section, but to stay cohesive, we're going to copy that title again, and we're going to copy what I have already in my document and paste it in here. And then we're going to copy the paragraph, drop it down. Honestly, the way I have this set up, the paragraph is actually going to be at the end. I just have a little thing at the end I wanted to add. And I want to show you another feature that we have in the content option. So from here, we have a table that we can add. So I'm going to simply drag that table and I'm going to put it in between the title and the paragraph that I just put in there. So here I'm going to announce the winners of last week's level up. These are all fictitious names that I just grabbed for this example. However, if we click on that table over here, we can see how many columns we need. And I do only need 3 columns. However, I do need 4 rows. So I'm going to add an additional row. Once again, so many customizable features. I highly recommend you go through and check. You can change the all of this. You can change the text color. So I do want to make that more uniformed here, and the border color as well. So I'm going to change those 2 options in the table. So from there, I could put up here, I can say levels, highlight this and put levels. And then we have men's and women's divisions. So we're going to put that in there. All right. And then I'm just going to copy from my document. I already did. I'm not, for this example right now, as we go, I'm not going to do the entire table. It is complete in the example that we have that Josh will be going over, but we'll just go ahead and put the first row in there. So we have the first row in. You can fill out all the different levels and the men and women's winners for that week. Your members will love to see the shout out in the newsletter. All right, so that is it for this section. We are going to copy our divider again, scroll down to the bottom, and then from here, we are going to go to our content and we are going to add another image. So we're going to drag that image down here. From here, we're going to next section. We have record your matches with Save My Play. If you guys don't have Save My Play in your facility, I would highly recommend checking it out. We have a great integration with them. They are amazing. Old Coast Pickleball, we have 2 angles. They have gestures where you can raise your hands and it highlights the last play, which is really super cool. So shout out to Save My Play. We're going to once again bring this title down here and we are going to grab our information and put that in there. And one thing I like to encourage our members with Save My Play is I like to encourage them to, we're going to duplicate this. I like to encourage them to send us their highlights. So either send it to us for us to share or tag us on their socials. So then, oh shoot, hold on, I pasted more than I needed to. There we go. So they can tag us on their socials and we can reshare it, which is super cool to share all of those highlights. And it's a great way to build content and showcase your organization. All right, we're going to duplicate our divider, bring that down. And the next section we have just an event. So this one I'm going to add, it's pretty much similar to what we did before. But the reason I have this in here is because there's something I wanted to let you know, just off of experience. I made a mistake, so I want to share it with you so that you don't. So I'm going to put another section in here about getting PPR certified. And if you notice, I actually put that image above the divider. So I'm just going to drag that divider up there and we're good to go. And so now, just repetitive. Once you build your templates, you won't be having to do this. And it will save your time. We're going to paste this in here and we are going to also duplicate this and drag it down. From here, we are going to copy a button for the first time. And so when you copy a button, a huge thing that I want you to see is we're going to go up to our button, which is a little ways up here. We're going to copy it and we're going to drag it down. So one of the most important things I want you to keep in mind when copying a button is check what it says. So here it applies again to register. So you can register again for this event. So we don't have to change this. We're going to use the button one more time where we will have to change this button, what the text that's on the button. But however, you also do want to come in here and you want to make sure that you change this information. So if we need the URL, Josh, I'm going to need you to hop on here really quick for me.
Yeah. So you want to create a new button there since the other one is set to mail to, since it's set to sending out an email.
Great to know. Okay, thanks, Josh. All right, we will be creating a new button. We're going to copy that button again and I'll show you. All right, so from here, we're going to set up our button again to match, but we will have the URL option in there. So let's change the color of our background. Here we go. Now we got our URL. So what I wanted to point out when you copy, and I'll talk about it again when we copy it one more time, make sure you change the URL. If you're copying this and you have a URL in there, it is going to stay the same. And so you obviously, if you're trying to get them to another website, you don't want to use the same one in there. So you want to make sure that you change that URL and you also check and make sure that the text in here is relevant for what you're needing. Thanks, Josh. All right, so we're going to copy this divider one more time, drag it to the bottom, and we are going to add talking about our Pro Shop. So from here, we're going to add an image. And we are going to say, this is the image I want. And we are going to grab those, bring those down. And the one reason I am showing this section is because we're going to use a new rows. So we haven't done that yet. So we'll go ahead and we will add a new row. And so I wanted to just bring that up, how you can do that. So here we're going to put that in there and put this in here. And so to add a new row, we have the rows here. We're going to go here and the default is the entire length. But for this option, I want to have 3 images in a row. So I'm going to grab this row and I'm going to put it here at the bottom. So now I have a new row. So this one, everything above this is the default row. Now I have the three options. So basically it gives us some columns. So we can add an image to each one of these sections. So I'm just dragging those images in there. From here, we can browse through our images and insert them. And the great thing about this, once again, is you can link to each one of these images, and you can also add your alternate text to those. So I wanted to show you that. However, one thing to know about the rows is that now we need to put our divider back in there, but we're on the three sections. So we have to go back to rows, and we have to now drag the default row back in there. Now we have the entire block again. And so we're going to drag this divider down and put that in there. And now we're back to the default row. So I wanted to bring that up. And then last section we're going to do before this option. So I'm going to go back to rows. I did change the row just back for the divider. Now I have another content row, and I'm going to drag in an image, and I am going to drag in a title. Oh, sorry, I didn't want to do that. I want to still copy and paste those. Okay. So here is our sponsor. If you're in St. Augustine, try them out. They're really great. So here I'm going to copy this, and if I drag this down now, it will put it in this section. So we can do a shout out to our sponsor. They have a special going on, so we're going to put that in there. Once again, we're going to add our text, our body, and we're going to put that in there. And the last section until the footer. So also what I want to add is I want to grab that button and link them directly to the sponsor's website. So I'm going to copy this button, drag it down, put it in this section. It will fit it in this section. But remember, we want to check and see what it says. I didn't change the other one, so got to do that. So visit website. So we'll just put some text in there to prompt them to call to action, what to do. Once again, if you click on there, you would want to put the sponsor's email in here, make any changes that you want. So lastly, we're going to go back and we're going to add our footer. So we do want to go back to our original default row, put this in here. We want to put our footer image, and we're going to put that in there. And the footer is here. All right, and I did not add the divider because I had to change the row, so let's add that right above there. Okay, so last couple things I want to do. With this image, you can see that it's not quite the right size. It's kind of a little short. So you can click this and auto width, and you can do the slider and change that width. So there's an option for that. All right, so content. One more content I want to show you is that we have our socials. Actually, there's two. I'll try and be quick. Socials are in here. If we click on here, we can put the URLs directly for your organization right in there, and it will direct them to it. Last thing I wanted to show you is we also have a menu option. So you could put the menu option in here, and you can click here and you can add items. So you can direct them to your website, directly to events, directly to reservations, directly to any option that you want them to in the membership portal. You can add on the menu there. So I'm not going to go through every step of this, but that's a really awesome option. I'm just going to put this in here so you can see. So you can type it in and put your URL, link, and all of that. You can add a different one, and I'm just going to say example. And you can do your URL as well. So last thing I want to show you before I transfer back over to Josh is that if you look up here on the top left, there's a preview option. This is super great tool because now you can see what your email looks like. So you can go through and see how it will be delivered to your members, and you can see how you created it. You can also see the changes and how it would look if they have their computer in the nighttime mode. And then you can also see how it would look on a computer, on a tablet, and then on your mobile devices. So you can see if any of the alignment's off or anything, you can make some changes with looking at this view, the preview before going forward. So you can click back and exit off of that. And then I just want to say one more thing before I pass it over to Josh. I really hope that this inspires you guys to be creative, and I would love to see what you're building for your organizations. So I'm going to, while Josh is talking, I'm going to put my email in the comment section. Please feel free to email me your newsletters and share all the amazing things you guys are doing with your email builder. Thanks so much for listening, and Josh is going to help you with your workflow.
Awesome. All right, let me share my screen again. All right, and we are back. All right, so just a few questions that I saw in the Q&A that I want to touch on before I go over the rest of the updated functionality in Bulk Email Builder. One, there was a question on the white space that shows on the sides of the email, and they just wanted a little clarification on if that is actual formatting in the email builder or if it just kind of has to do with the amount of space that we have available. So when you go back to that settings tab, you actually do have the option to choose the width of your content area. So if you do want to reduce the amount of white space on the sides, you would be able to do that. And then to kind of circle back to that preview button that Michelle was just talking about, from there, you can then use that preview button to sort of take a look at how your email looks once you sort of have adjusted that width. The next question that I wanted to point out, which is related to the improvements that we are making to the bulk email editor, it is going to be possible for one admin to go in and create this email and then have another super admin go in and edit that email that another system user has created. So if we backtrack a little bit here, when we go back to the drafts tab, you're going to be able to see the last time it was updated and also the system user that made that change to the email. So I did want to point that out there. So let's jump back to creating this email. And the last parts that I want to touch on are scheduling your email for a future date and time, and also the template dashboard that we have. So once you have completed all of your steps for creating the email, that send email button is now going to be available for you. When you click on send email with these improvements, you're now going to have two options here before you actually finalize sending the email. You'll be able to send it now, or you'll be able to schedule that email. And that's going to be where you see the send date and the send time. And that's going to be where you can select it when you are actually finished with this email here. So I'll just put a future date and time in here, and I'll click schedule email. And from there, that is going to take us over to the scheduled email tab. So from here, this is going to be where we're managing any emails that are scheduled for a future date and time that have not yet sent out to your players. So from here, we do have a view button. This is going to take us to a details page for this email. It's going to look pretty similar to the sent email details page that we have for a sent email. The only difference here is you will be able to edit the scheduled date and time from here if you ever do need to change that date and time. So if we go over to the more actions menu here, I do want to touch on some of the additional options that you have for a scheduled email. You do also have the ability to schedule the date and time directly from this page here. Looks like that modal is a little incorrect, so I'm going to have to write that down and keep note of that. The next option here is going to be send now. So if we want to disregard the scheduled date and time and we just want to send this immediately, we do have the option to do that here. And we do have the option to also cancel this scheduled email, which is really just a way for us to cancel the scheduled date and time and move this email back into a draft state. So if we need to edit the content in the email, maybe we need to re-choose the recipients for the email we're sending out, we will be able to do all of that from this dashboard here. Now, the last thing I want to touch on before I go over any other questions that we have in the Q&A section is the templates dashboard. This is going to be where we can create and manage any of those templates that we have created. So when we click on the templates button here, we're going to get a list of all of those templates that we have already created in our organization. We do have a create template button here, so you can start creating those templates from here. But when we go to the edit page for our templates, this is basically just going to look like the content step for when we're creating an email. So from here, we're going to be able to actually go in and edit the content within the template that we have created. And then from there, you'll be able to select this template as an option when you are going in and starting an email for the first time. All right, so those were the last two things that I wanted to touch on. I know we have some questions in the Q&A, so let me start going through those right now. Headers and footers are no longer automatic. We need to build them. We are working on getting the header and the footer re-added to that default from scratch email. So hopefully in the next few weeks, we will have that available by default. But of course, if you do want to build out a custom header and footer like Michelle did, you could add that into a template that you are creating. And then that way you don't have to use the CourtReserve header and footer if you do not want to. The other question was, is there an unsubscribe link automatically added? There is an unsubscribe button that is going to be at the bottom of that email. We just do not show it in the editor since you are required to have that content in your email. So we really just want to make sure there's not a way for an organization to manually remove it for any reason. So that will always automatically show at the bottom of an email once it has actually sent out to your players. All right. And then for the next question, can you import and export contact lists for emails, or can we only pull from emails with guests that have accounts in CourtReserve? So if we go back to creating an email here and we go to the two-step, the recipient list, of course, is going to have anybody that has an account inside of CourtReserve. We do still have the additional recipients field. So if there are any emails outside of CourtReserve that you need to send this email to, you do have the option of doing that. With that being said, throughout the last few months, we have added a restriction here where you are only able to add 200 characters to this field. We do have to put a limitation on how many players outside of CourtReserve you can send this email to. Because the purpose for this email builder really is to reach out to those people that have an account in your facility. So we have had to put that restriction on it over the last few months because the additional recipients field was being misused in a few cases. But you still do have an option to send it to a few additional recipients if you need to. Awesome. All right, it looks like we have a few more longer questions that I'll probably just need to dive deeper into after the webinar. Are there default templates available? Right now, there are not any default templates that are available. Definitely feel free to sort of reference this webinar as you are creating some of those templates in your organization. But unfortunately, right now, we do not have any default templates that we are adding in there by default.
Josh, do you want to show them the template that we have already? Did you show that? I'm sorry, I was reading some questions earlier.
Yes, let me jump over here. So we do have this example template that we have created, and it goes through a lot of those different content types and those different rows that Michelle was adding as she was building out that email. So, you can put placeholder text in here from a previous newsletter. You can kind of keep these content rows in a blank state. That's really just going to be your preference as you are crafting out these emails. But as you can kind of see here, you can sort of set up the formatting for your emails. So at least that way, the formatting is going to be consistent when you are, creating that monthly newsletter or sending out specific type of messaging to your players.
Thanks, Josh.
All right, of course. Yeah. Do you see any other questions here that might be possible to go over live? Let's see.
Yeah, there were some longer ones.
Oh, it looks like an admin sent in a good reference site for email layout. So let me actually go ahead and add that to the chat just so everybody gets that. Thank
That's
you.
awesome. Thanks, Michelle.
There we are. Awesome. All right, let's see. Is there a preferred formula as to how often you should actually send out emails to players? Also, is there a time of day that is best to send an email to members where you have the best chance of it being read? I think that really is going to depend a lot on the demographic of your players. We have some facilities where their demographic may be between 20 and 35, and there may be some facilities where the main demographic is 55 plus. And that can really make a difference on when you are sending out that messaging. You can also look into when your courts are being the most utilized and kind of use that as a time to not send out an email. But you can do using some of our reporting in CourtReserve. I won't dive too deep into it, but it's definitely worth taking a look at our court utilization report. That's a good way to see when your courts are the most busiest. And that way you can sort of use that as a time to sort of stay away from when you are trying to send out those emails.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. It looks like we have a few other questions that are a little bit longer, so I'll probably need to dive into those after the webinar here. But yeah, just to point one last thing out, we will have this recording on our YouTube channel in the next day or two, so definitely be on the lookout for that. We'll definitely try to get that uploaded as soon as possible. And I think that covers everything that we wanted to go over today, Michelle.
Yeah, thank you guys for joining us. This was so much fun, and I really hope you email me some of your emails that you built in CourtReserve because I would love to see them. Also,
Awesome.
too, I forgot to say earlier because Ashley did a shout out to all the content on OCP that I do. I just want to say I couldn't do it without the team at OCP. They help a ton, so shout out to them as well.
Awesome. And again, if anybody is interested in getting those improvements to the bulk email builder early, if you are interested in being a beta customer, feel free to reach out to our customer success team and just let them know that you are interested in being a beta customer for those bulk email improvements. And I will make sure your organization gets added to the next beta list. All right. Awesome. Thank you, everybody, so much. I hope you all have a great day.
See you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.